Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to today's bonus upload. Before we jump on into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because these things, they really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's bonus, shall we? Today's first encounter. Hello, I live in Portage County, Ohio, and the area I'm going to tell you about is the Country Township. There's one blinking traffic light and a lot of woods, lakes, and farms. Every night I would take my granddaughter, who was 9 years old, for a ride down all the back roads to see if we could spot some deer. One night we were coming down a road with no houses, as it was with most of the roads around this area. We're coming down on a part of the road that had a back end of a Christmas tree farm on the right with deep woods and a creek on the left. We were driving slowly so we would see deer if there were any, since it was a common place to see them. All of a sudden, from out of the trees on the left, a huge, and I mean this thing was a good 7 to 8 feet long, wolf-like creature came loping across the road not 20 feet in front of us. I say loping because it ran so awkwardly, like it didn't normally move on 4 legs. Like if you or I got on our hands and feet and tried to run. There was something so odd about its back legs. The best way I can describe it was almost like they had an extra bone or a joint to them. I stopped and stared in disbelief at this point, and my granddaughter said, "Grammy, what is that?" Like I said, it was long, black fur, thin but long-legged. Its chest was huge, like a pit bull's, only much bigger. Its tongue was hanging to the side. I didn't notice any teeth, nor did I recall a tail. I was so intent on those back legs. It loped, but pretty fast, across the road and disappeared into the woods. I know it was not a coyote, and there are no wolves in this area. Now, I am a country girl. The woods and the beasts in them have never given me any concern, but watching this thing move across the road gave me such a feeling of dread it actually left me with a kind of sick feeling. I have to add that this area is a hot spot for Bigfoot sightings. They go back for decades. The house we lived in was surrounded by woods, and a railroad track ran through them behind it. About a mile back, there was an old Indian burial mound, and only a handful of the old-timers knew about it. Past this was a Bigfoot habitat or hunting area. I say that because they had built an enormous corral out of 20 to 30-foot trees, all locked within each other and in a semicircle. It was marked with a huge X made of giant trees. The back of this area butted up against a very edge of one of the lakes. There are at least 3 large lakes that all connect, and I believe that is how they traveled between areas. One winter, after a big snow, I had left work and went to my friend's to stay the night. At 6 a.m., my daughter, who was 16 at the time, called me and told me I needed to come home right now to see something. She wouldn't say why. I had to get there fast. When I got home, she said our dogs, who were in the fenced area off the back of the house, had started going crazy that night. She looked out her window on the second floor but didn't see anything, and the way the pups were carrying on, she was too scared to go outside. Then she showed me the footprints. At the base of a huge catalpa tree was the first one, then another about 6 feet from that. They continued like that for a ways, and then it had turned and walked to the dog fence. Here the prints sort of shuffled back and forth, and then they continued through the yard and across the road into the woods, getting even further apart as it went. These prints had toes. They were not that long, maybe 8 inches, and they were narrow at the heel and slightly wider at the top. There were also very obvious claw prints. Bigfoot or Dogman, I don't know, but whatever it was, it walked on 2 legs. One last thing, I took my granddaughter and my grandson for a drive around the lake one night. We stopped because a deer went tearing across the road. It wasn't rut season, and I was wondering what scared it. When all of a sudden, my granddaughter grabbed my arm and said, "Grammy, go, go, go!" I looked at the spot where her eyes were focused on, and there were 2 bright red spots about 10 feet up in the thick brush. I just looked at them, wondering what they may be, and then they blinked. That was that. We got the hell out of there. Today's second encounter. July of 2020, my buddy and I decided to go shooting at night in the woods near Placerville, Idaho, near an old mining facility. This will be important later. The exact coordinates are 43.94, 36, 52, 65, 37, 38, 99, dash 116.013, 4217, 6045, 823. The entire drive up there, which I would assume would have been 10 miles, I was getting really bad vibes. But I didn't really say anything because I figured I was being a little bitch. Anyway, we get up there, clear that mining house with rifles in hand, then throw up some music and chill out for a bit. The entire time we're up there, it's pretty quiet. I'm still on edge because it's at night in the middle of the woods, in an area I've never been to. And I still have this sixth sense type of feeling like something is not right. My buddy says, okay, let's do some shooting and reloading drills. Buddy goes first, aims at the brim where the coordinates are, and fires 2 shots. The moment the second shot is fired, I hear something scream loudly from the tree line behind us, where the mining house is. It sounded demonic, like a cross between an elk, bear, and wolf dying. I say, fuck this, and book it back to the truck. My buddy turns around and unloads into the direction the scream came from. I hop in the truck, put my rifle up in the window in the direction the scream came from, and cover him from the truck while he runs back at it. At which point this thing screams at us again. I fire some shots in the direction. My buddy hops in the truck and we start. Turn on the lights, and as we are turning around to go back down the dirt road, a scream at us again. Only this time it sounds like a dog. We both look at each other and are collectively, what the fuck is this? What is this? We're making our way down the mountain. He's driving one-handed with a pistol in the other, and I have my AR pointed out the window. We don't hear any more screams, but the entire vibe feels like you are near death and being hunted. So, sort of very primal. I need to fight or die feeling that I have never experienced before. I still get chills thinking about it. Instead, we notice more weird shit. The moon had turned red. I have no explanation for it to this day. And there were weird lights in the forest, like orange orbs floating. On another ridgeline, there is no one out there. And we eventually get back down to the main highway where the moon has since turned back to its normal bluish white. My friend is an ex-Marine and combat veteran. I'm a seasoned outdoorsman. We cannot explain what happened. I've told this story a few times to close friends, and they have all pretty much told me the same thing. Whatever happened that night defied logic because it either was not of this world, or some sort of actual paranormal being or cryptid, or we were just super spooked by some animal and our mind was filling in the gaps. North America is a big place, and I personally believe there are creatures out there that we still do not know of in the more secluded parts of the continent. When we got back to Boise and began telling some of his friends about the situation, many of them said there is a Yeti or something up there, so who knows? I should also note that after shooting at it, my friend said he heard footsteps coming towards us, like it was running, and it was huge. There are mines up there, and other people who have gone to the area report feeling that same uneasy presence. It could be some undiscovered subterranean nocturnal species that is taking people, which is why people disappear without a trace. Who knows? Today's third encounter. This incident occurred in 2007 in the wilderness of Gila National Forest in New Mexico. I'm from New Mexico and was raised in Roswell, so this area I have visited several times prior with no issue. On this trip, I was with a group of maybe 10 people. We were 2 days into our trek with several more to go. For those of you who are not familiar with Gila, it's a stunningly beautiful area with trails that follow a winding river that carves through a canyon. There are high cliff sides jutting up hundreds of feet through some parts of the canyon and dense brush. Overall, it's very isolated and has an odd vibe to it in certain places. I've always associated that with the fact that it's an area with ancient Native American history dating back to at least 9,600 BC that I know of, or maybe even further. Lots of crazy stuff has happened there over the years, to be sure. It has a compelling history. On this particular night, we're camped in an area where the river makes a U shape as it wraps through the canyon. It was a fun day. I even managed to catch some trout that I ate for dinner. Right around dusk, I needed to relieve myself, so I wandered away from our camp into what I would describe as a ravine or arroyo, where flooded waters drain into the river. There was dense brush and high-sloped banks on either side. All in all, it seemed like a good place to go and do my business at the time. I made it up the ravine, and thinking back on it, I walked an unreasonable distance from camp, which I found strange, as if I kept walking, almost absent-mindedly or just drawn in further, which is not my norm. As a preference, there is something I think many here are familiar with that is known as the silence. Typically, this phenomenon occurs in nature when there is a large predator in the area. Anyway, I noticed it was very quiet, eerily quiet, and I knew that something was very wrong. When I say quiet, I mean the silence was deafening, if that makes sense. By this time, it's nearly completely dark, and I'm out of earshot of camp. Alarm bells instantly start blaring in my brain and gut. My hair stood on end. I noticed a strange change in my perception, likely caused by the twilight phase change, but the light around me seemed to become shrouded in a shadow quite suddenly. It was almost like someone had one of those sliding dimming switches for a light bulb. You know that feeling you get when you're sitting somewhere in public and you just feel like someone else is looking at you? That's what happened, suddenly and instantly. A few moments later, I heard a loud and distinct crack and an odd rustling from 30 feet away. Above me in the brush, it sounded like a person walking where no person should be. It sounded like human footsteps cracking twigs. I was petrified to make a move, but finished my business and stood as confidently as I could muster facing the direction of the sound. I was unarmed, and knowing what I know about predators, I didn't want to make myself appear any more vulnerable than a kid alone in a ditch in the dark. I've had encounters with bear, mountain lion, etc., but this felt so much different. I didn't have the high ground, figuratively and literally. I called out loudly, "Hello!" A few seconds passed, and the rustling continued in the distance. Silence, with no response back after a few moments. At this point, I felt beyond vulnerable and terrified, unreasonably terrified. In hindsight, and after researching, I often wonder if infrasound played a role. With my hair standing on end, I took a few steps backward, and that was when I noticed the eyes about 20 feet away, above the bank of the ditch, was a pair staring directly at me. I was in shock for a moment as it was near where I heard the crack, slightly iridescent-looking eyes high above me in the bank, high enough that they had to either be a massive creature or a large creature in a tree branch. The silhouette did not make any sense. But shadows play tricks on the eyes and mind. I can't be sure it wasn't a large owl or something like that. But the circumstances and general feeling make me believe otherwise. The silence and heaviness in the air was totally wrong and hard to explain. Instinctively, I backed up as slowly as I could, facing those eyes. And that's when I heard another crack above me to my right. This made me lose my shit, as the noise was much closer. At this point, my fight or flight kicked in, and I turned and sprinted as fast as I could. Breathless, I made it back to camp and told my friends I thought there was a possible large predator in the area, and we should make sure we bear bag and take precaution. Thinking back on it, it could have been a mountain lion or a bear. Who knows? One thing I know for certain is that I felt like I was in absolute danger and all of my alarm bells were screaming to get the hell out of there. It still freaks me out all these years later. The shade of that memory is always in the back of my mind whenever I'm out in the woods alone. All in all, I'm just glad I'm not another backwoods missing person statistic. Today's fourth encounter. This incident occurred in the winter of 1999 while I was stationed at Duluth, Minnesota Air National Guard Base. I was in a patrol truck doing my usual rounds, checking doors and fence lines late at night on the north side of the base. It was usually creepy enough when patrolling by myself. Anyway, I was on this road driving towards our baseball field when my headlights caught a pair of eyes reflecting back at me. They were almost eye level with me. Around this time, a few of the guys had been seeing this huge buck on the property, like a 16-pointer or something around that size. I was about 80 yards or so when I saw these eyes reflecting back at me, so I'm thinking it's that big deer. I thought that I've got to see this thing, so I hit the gas and started speeding toward the field. This is where it all happened so fast. It's almost hard to explain. There is a little slope behind the baseball field. It slopes down probably 12 to 15 feet into a brush line. The brush went about 30 feet, then turned into a thick tree line. The brush was probably armpit high to me and pretty tough to traverse through, being so thick. As I turned into the baseball field and turned the truck toward the thing, I just caught the rear end of it leaping down the slope. Below the line of my sight in the headlights, this thing was no more than 20 feet ahead of me when it leaped. All I got a look at was its back end. It was big. The best I can do to describe what I saw was wolf or dog-like in nature. It had a long tail, longer than 2 feet. The hind legs looked exactly like that of a dog's, same with the back paws, but the paws were huge. They were bigger than my hands for sure. The hair/fur was wavy yet matted and thick. The color was blondish or very light brown. I didn't notice any gray to it, but this all happened within 2 to 3 seconds. I sat in my patrol truck for a couple seconds, confused and thinking, I know what I saw, but it couldn't have been what I saw. So I hopped out with my flashlight and my rifle and walked to the edge of the slope. All I heard was this thing running through the woods in front of me, heading to the northwest direction. And this thing sounded like a moose charging through the trees. I mean, it made a lot of noise. That's when I started to get real scared, thinking if this is some sort of wolf or whatever it could be, my M4 isn't going to do a thing to this. So I jumped back into my patrol truck as fast as I could, head back to the headquarters. I never told another member about this for fear of ridicule or being called crazy. There's no way I misidentified this thing. I'm a trained observer, an avid hunter, and have worked with animal rehabilitation with the Minnesota DNR in the past. I know my animals and the North Woods extremely well. I saw exactly what I saw, and that was the back end of a large wolf/dog thing that basically had its eyes level with mine while in a patrol truck. The back end was definitely much larger than any of the largest deer or black bear I have ever seen. Today's fifth encounter. One summer day in Albion, New York, when I was a kid, I went for a walk to the woods I commonly frequented. I'd gone back for a while because my one-time boyfriend and I were about to enter the woods, but decided not to because we heard what sounded like several howls. I'm probably talking at least 7 or 8. The sounds grew and we decided to leave. This wooded area was off a residential area, but there was a path that takes you to an almost like hidden woods and farm area. It's so strange because now that I think about it, I was so close to many homes, but never could find sight of them in the woods. There's even a huge wide open field that leads to more wooded paths ahead, like a huge break dividing the woods. I loved and missed going to those woods. I later went back after, maybe a good few weeks. As I walked, it had rained not long before and the ground was very soft. I saw the most enormous tracks I'd ever seen in my life. The dog-like claw prints were bigger than my foot. How big are wolf prints anyway? I kept walking. The sun was out. It was a nice day. I started down the wooded path and sort of felt off, anxious. I kept trying to throw away the feeling. The woods have always been my sanctuary. I always felt the most at home in these woods. I picked up a large stone in case I had to scare off a possible threat. I felt like everything would be fine when I saw the sun in the open break that separated the two woods. I get to the clearing and walk to the middle when the loudest, deepest growl I'd ever heard emanated through the woods, like the whole woods were growling at me. I really tried hard to discern the location. I'm quite good at things like that. It truly emanated from everywhere. I was frozen in fear, and that was the first time in my life I knew what it felt like to be paralyzed by fear. I set the rock down knowing that pebble wouldn't do jack shit in a throwdown with whatever produced that growl, so I figured I'd set it down. I literally said out loud something like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean any harm. I now know that I am not welcomed in these woods. Please let me leave." I got the courage to take a deep breath, and I felt like I could go. But I tore the hell out of there and never went back again. Honestly, I don't feel the same way about the woods anymore after that. Alright guys, I'm gonna give you a bonus reptilian encounter. This happened in Colusa, California. My dog and I would sit on a doorstep at night and watch this gigantic white owl that would make this clicking sound like clock, 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 clock. It would roost in a huge oak tree across the street. Anyway, I see this Asian man walking up the sidewalk at around 3 in the morning, smoking a cigarette by holding it under, European style, and one arm behind his back. As he passed me, he nodded, so I nodded back. I thought it was strange being so late. He walked around the corner and was gone. A week later, my dog and I saw the same Asian man appear in the same place, a block and a half to the east, smoking his cigarette in that weird way. This time he walked by, he smiled and said very softly and meekly, "Hello," and bowed his head. I returned the same hello and bowed my head. His hard-sole shoes would make a clatter in the still of the night. In this small, rural farming town, virtually no one was out. A week after that, I slept with the double front doors open in my studio apartment for ventilation and listening to the crickets and bullfrog. At around 3 in the morning, I heard the sound of the Asian man walking closer. As he got to my door, he then stopped and turned and looked in at me, lying on my mattress on the floor. This time he had a hooded jacket and a reptilian face. We both just stared at each other for about 10 seconds. I was examining his face and noticed that he had eye sockets, but no eyes. He had a brow ridge and a small slit for a mouth. The scales looked like that of a snake and had a bluish-black color to it. He turned and continued to walk, but was not smoking a cigarette this time, though he had the same walking sound, clattering, and faded away. That was the last time I ever saw that man.
And there you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed this bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.